So this week on SDC, a bit of a deep dive into the news coming out of Apple over the last 7 or 10 days around on-device screening. And we start to look at where you should be concerned and where you don't have anything to worry about. There are, though, some really important settings that you need to change. Talking of which, we also have some tips and tricks on how to make Facebook more secure. You shouldn't give away more data than you need to. Talking of which, we also look at how the information that is stolen from you could end up costing your employer millions and millions of dollars. Tips and tricks to stay safe. So this has been an awkward few weeks for Apple, and we're not used to that. First there was something of an own goal with Pegasus, and is your iPhone safe or isn't it safe? And have they fixed it? Have they not fixed it? And then if you thought that was bad, what's happened in the last week, 10 days with the whole Apple announcing an update to screen content on users' iPhones, that has seriously blown up.
Yeah, so listen, I'm the newbie, if you like, to iPhones. I used to have an iPhone years ago. I've recently jumped ship from Android as was my primary smartphone. Now I'm on an iPhone again, and I jumped ship for 2 reasons, and they were security and privacy, which are better on the iPhone. Apple does these things better.
So the first thing is there are 2 very different things coming from Apple. It's all about child safety. The first thing is that it is going to screen the photos that you want to share to iCloud, and it's going to screen them against a collated, a central list, if you like, of child abuse imagery, and it hashes those images, or those images are hashed, and it compares it to hashes of your images. So there's no image-to-image comparisons. This is all done in code, if you like.
Which everybody else does. I mean, this is the same for Google Storage, for Microsoft Storage in the cloud.
100%. Let's be honest. There's no such thing as the cloud. It's some other dude's computer, right? Remember that mantra, right? That's the point. If you want to store your holiday snaps and your photos on Google's or Apple's or anyone else's cloud, or put it onto Facebook servers or anything else, then they have the right to check to make sure that what you are storing on their systems on their premises is not illegal. That's understood. So on this one, that's not really that unusual, the fact that it's being screened. What is unusual, and we'll come back to this during SDC this week, is Apple's doing the screening on your phone. It isn't doing the screening in the cloud, and that is a big, bold new step, and that is a bit of a game changer. The second update that Apple has announced is that it wants to try and, if you like, intercept potential child endangerment earlier in the cycle. So the idea is that if children are receiving or sending explicit imagery, it wants to try and intercept that and warn the children involved that they are seeing stuff they shouldn't see. And if those kids are really young, then it will say, if you want to proceed, we're going to tell your parents. And that's because Apple has these family groups. So there's kind of a parent over the child and all the rest of it. Now, that has the same connotations as the iCloud Photos issue. The screening will take place on your device. But the more acute issue here is iMessage is end-to-end encrypted, whereas Photos are not, and this does start to open an on-device backdoor, in inverted commas, into end-to-end encryption.
There are just so many issues with this, aren't there? I mean, it's hard to even kind of span them all in one go, because first of all, like you say, Zach, you've got to separate out iMessage and the encryption that's effectively being broken there, because it's not end-to-end anymore, it's happening on the device. And then from the iCloud issue, which obviously isn't encrypted, but then you've got misuse of this technology. Because I mean, the iCloud thing is against known hashes of known images, isn't it? So it's very, very specific, and you could think it's quite easy to get it to be accurate, but the issue might be, say, if China came along and said, well, we want these images to also be found by you, Apple, which Apple has said, obviously, we're not going to be doing that. And then we've got the separate issue of machine learning on iMessage detecting nudity. And, I saw a Twitter post yesterday saying that somebody had had a photo detected as nudity, and it was of a wooden table. So, this tech is not accurate, is it?
This is the third issue, isn't it? And it's, look, fair play, from everything you read and what we know of Apple, I'm sure what they're doing is all for the right reasons. And, there have been, later that they've come out and started to talk much more openly about what they've done and why they're doing it. And this is about child safety. It's a massive issue. the amount of child abuse and how that's facilitated by the internet message is huge, right? None of us want to stand in the way of that. And I've talked, for example, about Facebook not encrypting Messenger specifically for this reason. So make no mistake, we're all massive advocates for online safety, for, or for improving online safety for children. But the issue here is what happens when. And the challenge Apple has is that what it's going to roll out on day one is probably fine. And the safeguards they're putting in place are all well thought through. But we all know that with technology, it's all about unintended consequences. And the fact is that Apple's defense, whether it's to the Department of Justice in the States or more personally, the Chinese government, has been, it technically doesn't work. It's technically impossible. So when there has been pressure on Apple to breach end-to-end encryption, to try and intercept messages for law, warranted law enforcement purposes, it can say, doesn't work, can't be done, right? The signal defense, we'd love to tell you we have no data, it's impossible. Now Apple's going to find itself in a position where it's opened the door on that. It does have on-device technology for a different purpose, and it works in a certain way. But when China says, you know what, if you want to sell iPhones in China, you need to use the technology in this way, because I've got all these protests kicking off in Hong Kong, and we need to try and trap or catch the dissenters. That is suddenly that definitive, technically it doesn't work, defense has just gone out the window.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that worries me most, is the mission creep angle, if you like. And the fact that we've spoken about Apple's transparency over issues before, and I'm not sure they're being particularly transparent here either. Yeah, there was this press release that's gone out, and they've had a press conference, and they've come out and said quite plainly, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that. But one of the journalists that was at the press conference posted on Twitter that he'd asked a question specifically about what will happen if China requests that you use it for a different purpose. And the answer that he got there was, this was above our pay grade.
Yeah.
It's above our pay grade. We'll have to come back to that later.
Yeah, we're all Apple users, and Apple has a huge amount of trust in the user community, but it doesn't have a blot-free copybook, right? We've seen issues in the past with reports, came out in Reuters originally, that the reason iCloud's not encrypted, ironically, cycles back to this story and the photos issue, is because there was a compromise with the FBI. That's how it was reported. We know there have been all kinds of compromises in China. For example, the iCloud storage taking place on Chinese soil for Chinese users, where the encryption keys and the data is stored in the same place. We know that multiple apps have been pulled from, lots of apps have been pulled from the App Store because they breach local laws. And Apple will come out and say, look, we comply with local regulations. Of course they do. They have to. So the idea that the Chinese government would sit there and go, you know what, we've been trying to get into these comms forever, and it's been technically impossible, and now it's technically possible, but that's okay. We're not going to do anything about it. Apple can't say. Now, it has gone out and said, look, we promise we won't do it. But there's a little twist in that, because their head of privacy came out in an interview a couple of days ago and said that anyway, it's only in the US for now, so the US has got plenty of legal protection, so it's fine. And my view is, you can't have it both ways, right? Either you've got the safeguards in place technically, and we can believe the assurances you'll never do something, or it's only in the US where you have a different legal framework and you can rely on it. If your defense is it's in the US, then you are clearly nervous about some of the implications and some of what you're reading and hearing. And to your point, Davey, that the risk of mission creep is what is terrifying people here, that Apple has opened the iPhone to some kind of screening. ML, machine learning and automated, it might be, but that is a hell of a Rubicon to cross when you are a privacy-focused product provider.
Is Android any better, really, for our privacy and our security?
I don't think this is a reason to leave your iPhone, but I think what this has done is it has shone a light on the fact that Apple is providing an operating system and it's providing platform services. So is this a reason to leave the iPhone? No. Is it a reason to use Signal instead of iMessage? Yeah. Is it a reason to think for the first time about potentially how you store your photos in the cloud and what photos are stored on your phone? Yeah, maybe. Is it a reason to ensure you have control over the photos that are saved to your phone? And talking about that again this week on SDC around auto-saving images from platforms, yes. So I think what Apple has done is it has It's poacher and gamekeeper territory. And, you know, this isn't a technical breach of end-to-end encryption with iMessage, but it does suggest if you own both endpoints and you own the end-to-end encrypted platform, then you can start to play games with it. Signal doesn't own the endpoints. It owns the end-to-end encrypted messenger. That's fine. But, you know, what Apple is doing cleverly is it's saying, you know, we're not going to breach end-to-end encryption. We'll just mess about at the edge of the end-to-end encryption. We'll compromise the endpoints. And it's like, that is the same thing, guys. You do realize that.
Here's another thing. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I could well be. But I understand, so this will come in with iOS 15. It's not something that's going to happen with iOS 14.71. It's not going to come in with iOS 14.8, as I understand it. It's going to come in with iOS 15. Now, also, with iOS 15, we have a choice, well, with iOS 14, as we are now, we have a choice whether to update to iOS 15, because we can still get the security updates if we don't. So is this another option that we should be looking at? Are people going to be saying, well, maybe I'll stick with iOS 14, not move to 15, then I don't get this intrusion on my privacy, as I said.
Yeah, just to take this back a step, we have found out this week that there is going to be an iOS 14.8, which is very interesting. So it's come out in some code in like a developer environment that this is what's going to be happening. And everyone was really surprised because everyone was saying, well, wait a minute, I thought 7 was the limit. This is already kind of record-breaking point releases. We've got iOS 15, which is coming out in September, late September, we think, this year. So what's going on? Well, as we found out with an earlier beta of iOS 15, we are going to be able to just separate out the security updates from the features update, so you don't have to upgrade to iOS 15. So that is an important thing to say. And then, yeah, Davey, you're right. These new features for child safety are going to come in iOS 15 as well. I mean, for me, there are a lot of new features coming in iOS 15 that are absolutely brilliant for privacy and actually for security as well. Yes, I would get the security updates by staying in iOS 14, which is also great. And I'm wondering when 14.8 is going to come out, actually. Are they going to wait until, you know, iOS 15 comes out and put the security updates out with 14.8? Who knows? Because it is only a month away. But for me, I don't want to be someone who's saying I've got nothing to worry about, because that is the worst phrase anyone can ever utter when it comes to privacy. But I do think these new features in iOS 15, so private relay is one of them, stop to email tracking, which is going to be, I think, automatically switched on your phone. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach.
I think you need to enable it.
Oh, okay, so I'm wrong on that, but you can enable that, which is great. And then we've got more to stop tracking in general as well. We've got these kind of additions to privacy labels, which are going to be kind of laying out which apps have tried to track us via the app tracking transparency and how often they've tried to track us, which you can get via various apps now, but it's great to have this, you know, as a real report. So more transparency from Apple. We're seeing less transparency in many ways, but we will be seeing these new features, which I don't know what everyone else thinks, but in my opinion are worth upgrading to iOS 15.
Yeah, I agree. I think private relay and the mail tracking ones we've talked about before on SDC, I think are absolute game changers. I think, you know, it's a pop at Gmail and Chrome, and kudos to Apple for it. And it, you know, iOS 15 is a really big step forward from a privacy perspective.
That's it, actually, is the fact that we now have to get a lot more involved as iPhone users. In the past, I mean, these are intuitive devices. You give them to your mum, to your grandmother to use because they can pick them up. They're fairly secure and private by default. But now it's becoming more necessary for having kind of more interaction with your device to make it more secure. You have to kind of read the news, read what's going on. I mean, it's almost becoming a lot more like being an Android user, where you have to really lock it down because obviously Google's got control by default on many of the services on Android, and the fact that you're getting a lot of malware on the Play Store. So almost it's like it's not an opening up of the operating system as much, but in some ways it is, because there are more routes in, so there are more needs for us to make it secure ourselves.
You know, we know that there are more attack vectors out there, more opportunities for people to attack us as, you know, companies or us as individuals. And I know, you've been looking at some of the more acute examples of this again this week, David.
Yeah, I've been investigating a number of reports have been published in the last few weeks about something called initial access brokers and their place in dark markets and how they enable ransomware. And initial access brokers do what they say on the tin. They sell access to compromised networks in businesses, generally large enterprises. It's the sale of those compromises that give ransomware players the first access to a network, so that they can get on the network and they can do their stuff and get the files, data removed, downloaded, and then do the encryption. Now, the pricing of this stuff is incredible. I've looked and I've seen it going. Access to a healthcare provider in Colombia was as cheap as $240. I mean, that's nothing. To the other end of the scale, access to a multinational company with a $500 million valuation in Australia went for $468,000. On average, access brokers are selling these compromises for $10,000. And there are plenty and plenty of takers.
It's strange, isn't it? Because you can literally buy anything on the darknet today, and they become more and more innovative in what they're selling, and the costs are just going higher and higher, aren't they?
This is, I mean, obviously we don't know for sure, but this is largely driven by ransomware operatives, and it's largely provided for ransomware operatives.
Well, something I've been looking at this week is some new privacy and security controls. Well, not new ones, but an adjustment to the privacy and security controls to make them more easy to use on Facebook. There's been a bit of a divide over whether they are now more easy to use. Basically, what's happened is one of the privacy controls has been pulled out of one of the wider controls, so you can see it more easily. What I would say about it is, first of all, it's only on mobile web. So I don't even use Facebook on the app anymore. I do use Facebook, unfortunately, but I feel like I have to. And I use it on my browser, on my computer only, and I lock it completely down, which I think really is the takeaway here. So these new privacy controls have come up, so people can see it more easily. You do need to, if you use Facebook, you need to go in, and there's a lot of things that you need to manage. First of all, your ad profile. There's a massive ad profile of you on there on Facebook with, if you allow it to, all the sites you've been on, who's been sending your data to Facebook, along with a really funny message, which actually made me chuckle yesterday when I was going through my controls just to check everything was turned on, which says, Facebook does not sell your data to anyone.
No, it doesn't sell it to anyone. It sells it to everyone, surely.
That's what I thought, exactly. I really wondered how they said, how they could even say that, to be quite honest.
Because they don't sell the data. They sell access to the data. So they'll label you to market to Kay, who lives in a certain area and likes certain things. They won't give that data to anyone. So it's semantics, I suspect.
Well, they were saying it's not your profile data. So they were saying it isn't your name and it isn't your telephone number and your contact details, right? So that's what comes underneath it as a caveat. But what they're not saying is that every ad that you interact with, every website that you go on, and what you do on the web is sent to Facebook. It's just that they're going to say that this information is anonymized. But the fact is, data is being collected, shared by Facebook. If you're on Instagram, you're also sharing that data too, which people forget. I just think it's very important that you continually go. If you do use Facebook, I know you don't, Zach, do you? But
I have an account. It is never used. Occasionally I dip in for the writing stuff. Occasionally I dip into it and I look rude because there's all these messages that I've never replied to and invites from people I know that I don't have any friends on Facebook. So it's like, and then you feel, do I need to tell people I don't use Facebook? Ignore.
Yeah, I friend requested you ages ago.
I know. Okay, so now we'll have this conversation. I'm not being rude. I have no friends on Facebook.
I've been on Facebook for the longest time, so long now that my privacy has gone completely. There's no point me trying to get it back.
You say that, Davey, but you know, as I understand it, you're also looking at the fact that our LED lights are listening in as well. So maybe there is no privacy anymore.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I have been looking at some research that's come out of the Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. And these were the same people that I wrote about almost a year ago, just over a year ago now, who found that you could spy on people's conversations using just an ordinary dumb old-fashioned light bulb. Now they've discovered a way of extracting audio from speakers, only audio from speakers, mind you, by using minute electrical voltage fluctuations in the power LEDs of those speakers or the USB hub that they're plugged into. Now you can't see these fluctuations, but they're there, and you can pick them up using a specially adapted telescope.
If you go onto Facebook and you message your friends and tell them you're worried, Facebook will send you ads for technology that you can buy that will keep you safe.
That's a roundabout way about it, isn't it? That would work. That's the thing. It's a cool hack, isn't it? I mean, we like to talk about these kind of cool from a technical perspective hacks, and the security researchers who did this, like, kudos to them. Like, good for them.
Absolutely.
I love this stuff. I love this stuff. This feeds me, it drives me, it keeps me going. But no, it's not something you really, really, really have to be concerned about. What you really have to be concerned about are things like Apple and whether they're scanning your device.